Hey, you beautiful buccaneers, Falcore here. So for the longest time in Sea of Thieves, we've always had to rely on cave paintings to get an understanding of what the Ancients actually looks like. And now, thanks to the Legend of the Veil and the more recent adventure Siren's Prize, we now know exactly what they look like. And we also know they never actually died. The Siren's Prize shed some light on what happened to the Ancients, and why they are nowhere to be seen. To put it bluntly, they all went to the Sea of the Damned by choice, but they didn't die. They found a way to travel there. The Ancients were very superstitious people. They believed in prophecies, visions, and relied on a royal court to gift them this knowledge. The only difference between the world outside of the Sea of Thieves and the one within it is that these visions and prophecies were actually real. The deceased ancestors of the Ancients began to communicate with them through their dreams, telling them the locations of magical items or mystical treasures, and they began to question if the land of the dead wasn't just a place you could visit once at the end of your life, but a place you could travel to and return, and trade with those on the other side, maybe even bring them back. Using the knowledge given to them by their ancestors, they found magical stones that shared several magical properties, and once placed into a mask, which we now know is the Veil of Ancients, it granted the Ancients passage to and from the Sea of the Damned. But they discovered quite quickly that once there, their thoughts and memories could be made into reality. If they wanted vast riches, they could simply think it into existence. This knowledge terrified the Ancients. If you were a good person and all you wanted was food, water, and gold, it wouldn't be such a bad thing. But if you were a bitter or even evil person, you could amass armies, weapons, and powers, and then bring them back to the land of the living to serve your agenda. But if carefully maintained, this Sea of the Damned could essentially be an eternal paradise for the ancient people. So a pact was made in the royal court. They decided to take the journey to the Sea of the Damned, but only take their brightest souls. All those who were deemed dangerous or disruptive were left behind and named the Eternal Guard to essentially protect the land of the living and protect the passage to the Sea of the Damned, which potentially could explain the skeletal curse. But for those who made the journey through, apart from the Royal Guard themselves, nobody truly knew where they were going. They didn't know it was the land of the dead. They just thought they were traveling to a magical realm. The Royal Guard took with them all of the weapons they had created, capable of mass destruction, so that the land of the living would remain safe. And they also cast their shrines and places of worship into the abyss, so that their secret could be kept safe and they could remain in peace. We now know these as underwater shrines. But there was one weapon that was left behind, and not by choice, and that weapon was a great warrior. The Ancients had many great warriors, one of which who fought back the Siren threat and also quarantined herself to stop the coral curse from spreading, one of which who betrayed his people by fleeing to the Sea Queen's arms and using the magical stones to transform himself so he could be with the one he loves for all eternity. But in the process, he released a whispering plague, which cursed the Sea Queen and her people, turning them all into the Sirens. He died a traitor's death for this. However, another great warrior, one whose deeds were so great he was given a place in the heavens for everyone to honor, was left behind. His soul was bound to his remains and scattered around the ocean, so one day he could live again if his power was needed. And in the Siren's Prize, this was our duty, to find the remains of this great warrior and resurrect him. And we succeeded. But doesn't all this sound familiar to you? This is essentially what happened to Flameheart. He too bound his soul to his remains, in the hopes his people would once resurrect him, except it wasn't his people that ended up doing this, as his people were all but gone. Instead, he manipulated several people to do his bidding. Stitcher Jim, Wonder the Warsmith, even Duke, and of course us with Pendragon in tow were the ones responsible for bringing him back. The difference is we only brought back his soul. Flameheart is not yet at his full power. He only has limited control over the Sea of the Damned, and he can breach the veil and bring his apparitions into existence in the real world. His ghost fleets, his ashen lords, his sea forts, all would pale in comparison to what he could do with full control over the Sea of the Damned, something I imagine the ancients are in constant battle with beyond the veil. So they would need their warrior there to take back control of their domain, and with their ancient knowledge, the Great Warrior now resides in a place in the Sea of the Damned that they call the Sea of Tribute, a paradise for their people. Although we have been to the Sea of the Damned countless times, we are yet to see this place. This ancient realm would be the center of all that the ancients have learned, and all they have manifested in their time of being in this domain. And since they wanted to keep this place secret from the land of the living, we now know why and what all these ancient structures are in the Sea of Thieves. Strange archways that remain dormant, some with triangular keystones that are now missing. These strange structures were possibly the gateways to the Sea of the Damned, now lost to the tides of time. But the ancients now know that the lands they used to live in, our home, will indeed need protecting from powers that may threaten both our lives and theirs, and they have promised to one day return when we are in need. And that need is not far away. The whole reason why we help the ancients bring back their warrior is because of a prophecy, the resurrection of an entity known as the Herald of Flame, an ancient power that could potentially threaten both the land of the living and the land of the dead. And that day is coming very, very soon.